So a little bit about me. Well, first off, I am, believe it or not, 51. I know I look a little older,
I thought 25.
yeah. So I've been around some blocks. I started off in the U.S. Navy. I did nine and a half years.
Thank you for your service.
You bet. I'm here to serve, right? So I was a Navy journalist though in the Navy, and so that's all about telling stories, right? And it's interesting to me that that's kind of where my whole career is morphed back around to, is that now I tell stories, but it's just with data, right? After the Navy, I came to Bend, Oregon here. That's where I'm coming to you from today. My wife's parents live here. And so first job was with a local nonprofit, did that for a little while, then switched over to working for ODOT as just a basic IT technician, and then on to the Oregon court system. Did that for about 5 years, where I got into SharePoint. And then my first little tipping of the toes into the water was while I was working there. I did some Microsoft Access databases, right? So those Access databases,
they still exist.
Oh yeah, it was definitely a thing. Actually, now that I think about it, when I worked for the nonprofit, I managed an Access database there as well. So yeah, Access is where it all started. Then kind of into SharePoint. I ended up moving from the courts to a like a local consulting company, and that's where I got into business intelligence, and that was back around 2009, 2010, something like that. Looks like you are on. Oh,
I was on mute. Yeah, students are coming in, so I'm double dutying right now. I'm trying to get them on the meetup, so hopefully you have more questions and content.
Right on. So starting in 2010, that was kind of my first introduction to Microsoft's business intelligence. Lots of SQL server analysis services and SSRS reports. And then stuffing those reports into SharePoint. So that was kind of where we used to put reports way back when. And then moving on to a short stint with our local hospital, which I have to say was probably the worst job I've had in my entire adult career.
Oh, and then finally, oh yeah, you're so lucky you got to get out.
You would think healthcare would be like super rewarding given what you get to do, which is to help the people that are helping the people, right? And yeah, it was not that. So I lasted about 5 months, and then moved on to the city of Bend, and I've been here basically ever since. Started off with the city over as the SharePoint admin, SharePoint and Office 365 administrator, but still data was kind of where my passion was. And so when I first started showing people how to use Power Pivot, which is a Excel tool, was a plugin way back then. Started showing folks in the budget team how to do that, and then that morphed over to Power BI. And then back in around 2017 or so is when we had our very first Power BI training, and I've kind of been going strong ever since then. And so you asked that question of whether or not I love Power BI or I'm just kind of playing. I would have to say I'm more on the in love with it kind of place. Yeah, I love what it allows me to do, and more importantly, I love what it allows the folks that I work for to do. Right, so that would be not just the citizens of the employees of the city, but also the citizens, right? It puts a lot of power in pretty much everybody's hands. So all that's pretty awesome stuff. As far as what I'm doing now with the city, like I said, I work for the Office of Performance Management. Maybe I didn't say that, but I work for the Office of Performance Management, and we've been around since about February of 2018. Started off as the data and analytics program. There were all of 4 of us way back then. And we all had this theory, this idea that we could be a data-driven organization, and we used to get together and talk about it. And finally, we convinced people that we could do it. And we have one department in particular, that's our community development department. They were going kind of gangbusters with data, trying to be very data-driven. And CDD, those are the people that are in charge of permitting. And permits are really important for a city, particularly when you want to build a new thing, right? Whether it's a new shopping center or a new single family home or an apartment building, if you want to build a thing, you need a permit. And people care deeply about how quickly a permit can be turned around, right? So at the time, CDD was pretty data-driven with their old system. And so they're like, you know what? We'll pay for you guys to come be part of us. And so 4 people from kind of different parts of the organization coalesced there in CDD, and we became the data analytics program. And then a little bit later, we ended up becoming the Office of Performance Management after we proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that we could do good things. We had confidence, but we had to prove it. And, yeah. So now I manage the reporting and database team within OPM. That's the name that they coined themselves. They being the other 2 folks who work for me. So we get to go by RAD, which is awesome. I manage a pretty rad team. We have 3 other teams within OPM. That would be GIS, that's Geographic Information Systems, so data on maps. We have the Enterprise Asset Data Division. That's more data on maps, but enterprise assets would be things like water and sewer lines and manholes and all those kinds of things, right, that need a place in the world spatially. And then we also have a continuous improvement program, and that's that program is known as Spark. Let's see. In terms of what we have on the Power BI side of things, we started with a Power BI report server, still have that thing in service right now. Eventually, we made it to a Power BI premium capacity, which is awesome. And right now, we're at a little over 300 Power BI and paginated reports in use across our organization. That number literally changes weekly as we bring new reports on and retire old ones. So, but generally, the trend has been up, and away.
That's awesome, Ray. Thanks for giving us a little background. I mean, that's quite the evolution of career paths. And one thing that sounded like it resonates across all of them is this idea of that being in service, right? And being in service from a data perspective, whether it's the constituents, the citizens, the organization. I love that you're really pushing transparency through data from both sides of the coin. So love that. And I think a lot of city to state to federal governments can, take a piece of that and hopefully run with it. Now, yeah, hopefully. Questions. Can you describe the initial stages when the department began scaling from handling individual reports to becoming an organization-wide program? What were the key factors that triggered this transition? And I think, that scaling piece is always tough for organizations. When they're starting, they're like, we're just going to enable this, give people access, nothing can go wrong, right? Then all of a sudden you've got a weed growing in your backyard. Did you guys kind of follow that same path, or were you more thoughtful from the get-go?
So I will say that this is where my SharePoint experience really sort of helped. And I managed SharePoint for a couple different organizations. And so if you've been around SharePoint at all, it can absolutely have that sort of weed effect. So you put SharePoint out there, you give some people some access to it, and the next thing you know, there's 85 million sites and data scattered everywhere, and it's like that, right? So I knew going into this, we needed to have a bit more control over it than that. Also, we started small, right? So we started with that Power BI report server, and the report server is a lot more limited in what it can do. And so between my kind of experience with SharePoint and the report server being essentially just a SQL server with Power BI report server kind of, on top of it, it was seen as more of a IT type, an IT asset, right? And so it was just a lot more managed that way. So we started off with that and just a handful of Power BI and SSRS reports, some analysis services, models, etc. But the real turning point for us was when that CDD, that Community Development Department, when they chose a brand new permitting, licensing, and code enforcement software, and that marked a giant turn, right? Because basically, like I mentioned, they were already a very data-driven department. They already had some Power BI reports. They already had a lot of SSRS reports, and we had to not only migrate those from the old system to the new system, but we had a whole slew, dozens, literally of dozens of reports that also had to come online when the new system stood up. So that the new system went live in December 2020. But the work start for that was back in February 2019. So at that time, we were probably 5 or 6 people. So still pretty fresh into our experience as a new department. And basically, that was kind of it, right? That was the part that really pushed us from having to be, or from being this, small kind of a niche thing to something a lot bigger. Was CityView going live. That's the new permitting software. So we had to build literally those dozens of reports, and today there are 138. So of that over 300 reports, just over 300 reports, 138 of those are from that CityView system all by itself. So that's how we scaled. We were sort of forced to scale, but we had a pretty good blueprint, based on what we already had, and then some experience in the back that just kind of led me to having an idea of how to push forward without making it crazy.
So kind of on that note, I mean, scaling is awesome. I love to see it. I remember when I actually joined SkyPoint, one of my first forays was I met you. I learned about City of Bend because we were doing the dashboard and days and things like that. And I remember going to data.bendoregon.gov for the very first time. And I thought, damn, that's pretty cool considering my experience, especially now that I live in a little small town, little Malala. Data's not too big out here in these parts. One thing that caught my eye, especially over the last year, and that I see that you guys have live on your site now too, is like around the permitting process. Because I just spent the last year helping my parents construct an ADU on their property. How did you convince people? Like, how did you drive adoption across all these different departments? You scaled, which is awesome, but how did you get that adoption along the way?
Yeah, so it's that's a pretty tough one. Adoption's hard. It just is, and I'm not going to pretend to like I've got it all, right? But we had some key things kind of come together all at the same time, right? So I mentioned we started back in 2017 with our first training for Power BI, and we had a small group of folks in the budget office, and they were all about Power BI. Originally Power Pivot, and then Power BI came out, and they're like, this is the thing, right? And so we got that first training going. So that first training, I think there were 20 of us for 3 days of Power BI training then. So we started with the sort of from the ground level, right? Ground level up, like getting people trained up on how to use the tool and seeing the benefits. So you got the people down at sort of the ground level who have an idea of how it works and want to use it. And then over the years, we've had some kind of really good luck, I guess. Some of that being we got a new chief innovation officer. She's a data person herself. She used to be on the GIS side of things. And now she's assistant city manager. So on the executive side of things, like we've got, executive sponsorship. That's pretty awesome, right? The person who was managing CDD, who, stood up and said, yeah, we'll take you guys and we'll form the data and analytics program that became OPM that I work for now. He also now is an assistant city manager. So also at executive level, somebody who really believes in data. And so we've kind of been doing this thing where we meet in the middle, right? So we've got, this very much a lot of interest in data and analytics and using all that from the top level, and then this push up from the bottom as well, right? So, and it's all just an ongoing thing. We've coupled that with some really some key wins. Like one of the first things we did was as a data and analytics program with 4 people, we got a council goals dashboard out, which was really just a series of Power BI reports published using that, push to public, and then embedding those in our website. And so we were able to get that out to the public, and then the city council saw it and they said, wow, this is great, being able to show what we're working on and then show the progress that's going on. And back then it was really basic. Like we were having to, call people on the phone and go like, what's the current number for this, every single quarter, and you stuff that into a spreadsheet that Power BI can get to, and then hit the refresh button manually, right? And so it was a lot of that. And then we did pretty well with the City View launch, right? So that I mentioned the launch was December 2020. So that was what, I don't know, 9 months into COVID. And we had to pivot big time in COVID. We all got sent home and had to work from home. And so we had a major system launch 9 months into that. And they needed that data to do their jobs, when that data had to be there from the get-go. And it was a successful launch during COVID, and they had the data they needed. So we had those wins, right? We had those some small wins, some big wins like that, and then we had the pushing from the bottom and the top, and that's kind of what's driven adoption, really.
I think having both of those is super important. You need the top down and the bottom up, because without one or the other, it just becomes a fight, right? And it shouldn't be a fight with data. And so I think you guys are in a really good place where you have that, and that everybody is rallying around the data. Tina, awesome question, by the way. Let's move on to the next one. So goals and alignment. Were there specific objectives in mind as you guys expanded and scaled the scope, aside from some of the things you've already mentioned? And was this understanding of data being self-service? Did people really grok that? Because I think we all think of reporting as, I'm just waiting for my Excel sheet in my email, versus, oh, I have to go somewhere and like press buttons, use a slicer. I mean, I think that's probably the impetus of why you did training, right? Is how to use the tool. But sometimes even after training, people forget, like, wait, don't I get this Power BI report emailed to me? Even though, through the training, it's like, hey, we're using the service, this and that. I mean, did it take a while to get people used to self-service?
Yeah, so boy, there's a lot in that question. So let's I'll start with the kind of the first part. So in terms of goals, right? So with the City View launch, like I talked about, the main goal was just making sure people had the information they needed so that they could do their jobs and get the permits out when the system launched, right? So that involved just lots of replacement of the existing reports. There's lots of money involved with permits, so we needed lots of auditing reports that unfortunately end up being Power BI tables.
If I can get some permit coupons, would be great.
I'll work on that one too. Yeah, so we had to do a lot of kind of meeting people where they were and with the needs that they believed that they had. Sort of that broader, for the broader program, the idea was we really wanted to increase access to accurate data for city employees, right? So people spend all day putting data into all of our systems, and usually at best they can search for like a row, what amounts to a row of that data, like one little piece of it, one slice in that system, and have it turn around and spit out the details of it, but not see like overall patterns or trends or anything like that. And so really it was just getting that, the goal was to get that accurate data like on a big scale out to people and put it in their hands. As our data journey has kind of matured though, the goal has really increased more recently, and that's that data portal that I put in there, but really to make the city's data accessible and transparent for the people that we serve. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you might have seen my announcement, was it last year, about the police data portal. I'm going to drop that one into, that's policedata.bendoregon.gov. We've got similar efforts underway now for the fire department, because police and fire are kind of competitive, and so the fire department's like, hey, you guys got it, we need that, right? And so that goal of making that data transparent, it's sort of snowballing. We've got another one underway right now for affordable housing, right? So the housing department, that's pretty key, and particularly in Oregon, right? On the West Coast, right? Affordable housing is a big deal. And so we're doing a lot here in the city, and want to be able to highlight that for people. And I lost my place. So Greg, can you remind me, like, okay, so that those were the goals.
To reorient it. You got the goals. what I got into the next piece, and sorry for cramming so much. I feel like I like throw in statements and questions and lose myself. I suck, so I'm not making this easy on you.
Oh no.
But the next part was about self-service analytics.
Yeah.
You know, what was that adoption curve like? You know, were there any keys as to how you got people to get more used to, you know, going and accessing data and self-serving versus awaiting things in their email?
Yeah. So we've got a couple of different types of folks here that use Power BI. So we've got the people who are definitely just report consumers, right? I've got a view, I've got view access to a Fabric workspace. I go and I use these reports, and that's all I do, right? And then we do have those folks that are doing the more of the self-service things. It's a smaller group of people for sure. They're people that are management analysts, they're business managers, people like that, right? That need like deeper access into the data. So they already had a job where they were doing that, or they're coming into the job where that's sort of the expectation, right? And so for us, it's mostly about putting the tools, you know, the training in their hand, you know, getting them the training and then putting the tools in their hands, and then creating things like, like we have templates, and the templates, and I should show one of these. I think the templates are super cool. Let me see if I can pull one of these up.
Yes, show us.
Yeah.
So you
Because
are going to share your screen.
I'm hoping that it works. You'll have to let me know if this works.
Yeah, it's coming up.
It's coming. It's
Boom.
coming.
Yes.
It's almost there. Come on, template. Come on.
Yeah.
You can do it.
You got this. So close.
Bada bing, bada boom. There's a template.
Boom. Yes.
Right.
Was that a Power BI T? Was that a PBIT file?
PBIT file. Yeah, absolutely. So
Rock
you can
on.
see it's got, like if you're looking over here, we've got a place for report measures. I believe in a measure table. I know some people don't like I'm a measure table person. I like my measures to be where they're supposed to be. So we've got a measure table. We've got the standard date table in there that has stuff like the fiscal year baked into it, a refresh date that's kind of baked in. But more importantly, we have stuff like this. Like here's your common databases and servers, right? So for CityView, that's our permitting application. Munis would be our sort of HR and budget finance application. And then Mirror Pond is our data mart. So it's got what people need to use to connect to those. And then all these are
buttons. Come up with the name Mirror Pond?
Oh, it's the name of the cool pond that's in downtown Bend.
Well, I should probably know that.
Yeah, so it went from data lake, right? We were thinking data lake, but it's not lake size. It's more like pond size. And we're let's call it Mirror Pond, right? So that's how we got there. Puddle was too small. It was not going to be Mirror Puddle.
I want a data puddle lake house. Data puddle house.
Yes, a lakeside.
Small volumes of data. Okay, anyway, I'll stop. Yeah, I'll stop bugging you. Yeah.
So you can see here we've got some handy dandy pieces though for those folks who are doing. And actually, I always start with these templates too because they just make life so much easier. But we've got links to things like a report catalog, the City of Bend's brand guidelines, the report publishing checklist, the report polishing checklist, Power BI visuals guide, and then different sample reports that are built with these, right? So this lake sample report here, if I were to open this sucker, and of course, it's going to slow down and be really slow. But the idea is to give people like the how to connect to the data, and then a place to start if they don't have ideas. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm building a Power BI report, just getting started, like how am I going to lay the thing out? What should it look like with these colors? How does all that work? Sometimes that stuff can get really hard, and so we've got all these samples out there that just show here's what, you know, if you're going to pick the lake template, and lake just happens to be one of the colors that the City of Bend has, right? We have fonts and colors and all that stuff that we're supposed to use, right? So we've got just different pages that are set up to use and show, set up to show exactly how things could look in your report.
You guys have such a mature template. Like I've seen a lot of organizations templates, and you guys have taken it to the nines. Using those tiles as guides, being able to show examples. People take note, screenshot. Like, this is amazing here.
The templates definitely a lifesaver. I think so. I've got one person who works for me who is the primary report author now, and then I still build a lot of these Power BI reports, and then the analysts and stuff that are out in the departments. But we all use the templates because it's just so much easier to start from this than to start from scratch. Yeah. Okay.
Hear that.
Yeah, so self-service, those are some of the tools that we use to kind of make the self-service piece easier, right? There are other things too that maybe we'll touch on a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, that alludes to my next question, which is, were there specific tools or systems that were crucial for the scaling process, aside from just this template file?
Yeah, really the main tools are just, it's SQL Server and Power BI, and then eventually the Power BI premium capacity and like that. But I don't just use what's there, right? It's not just SQL Server to store the data, it's SQL Server to get telemetry data off of the reports that are being used, right? The Power BI report server database, so that you can see executions and usage and who's using it and whether it's being used and when a refresh is failing, stuff like that. I would also, I guess, include PowerShell, because I'm grabbing data via PowerShell from the service now, from Fabric now, to pull back down and stuff back into SQL Server, so I can get that same kind of data to use to govern the reports, right? So those are the I guess the main tools, right? It's using the tools on themselves to help me manage all of it.
Love it. Okay, a little tougher question, because I know a lot of organizations, have it's hard to scale up, right? And so what were some of the secret sauce of how you guys developed that training, gave people responsibilities without them maybe realizing it, of being a data steward? How did that internal skill development happen? Was it mandated? Was it coaxed?
So yeah, a little bit of both, I think. Because like I talked about, we have this from the bottom and from the top, this squishing, of learning the skill. So we continue to do formal trainings every year, basically since 2017. We've done 8 formal trainings. Got another one scheduled for the fall of this year. That's 85 people total trained, and 75% of those folks are still with the city. So that's pretty awesome.
Quick question on that.
Besides that,
is this like a custom training you guys have done? Are you taking like the in-a-day training? Is it a little mix of both?
yeah, so it started off as like a dashboard in a day kind of training, and then that morphed into Power BI basics. And most recently, we're doing a very custom training, right? Where we worked with a vendor to develop custom training with our data. If you've done dashboard in a day or a lot of the other Power BI trainings, a whole lot of it is all about sales data, right? How many times can you do the AdventureWorks database and figure out sales quarter over quarter, year over year, like that? That does not translate well when you're not in sales. When you're in government and you're caring about, now maybe I should back up. It doesn't translate well if you're not a data person, right? Who can kind of like take that mental leap and see how you're applying the lessons you've learned to how many permits did I collect this year, right? So what we've done, like I said, is work with a vendor to develop a specific training for us that is basically kind of like Power BI fundamentals, but it uses licensing data. So there is money involved with business licenses. It's not like sales data for sure, but it resonates a lot better, right? Because it's stuff that we do here at the city, and our folks can relate to. Yep. Besides those trainings, though, I also do regular 1 hour kind of monthly monthly trainings like Intro to Power BI, Intro to Power Query in both Power BI and Excel, stuff like that, right? Or Power BI at the 30,000 foot level. How do you use Power BI reports in the service, and how do you make use of things like bookmarks and all that, right? So I've got these kind of rolling monthly trainings that are going along as well, just to kind of keep people interested. It helps with that adoption piece, and then it also helps to kind of prime them for those bigger, more formal trainings.
Do you do office hours too, or more just like this is like the specific content and we go after it?
Yeah, so I have experimented with various versions of office hours, both like set, hey, I'm sitting in the office, come visit me, or hey, I've got a virtual office, come visit me, or hey, I'm using Microsoft Bookings and you can schedule office hours at your leisure. For the most part, I've found that those aren't super helpful. People don't tend to take very much advantage of it. And so when people reach out, yeah, and that's my organization. Your organization definitely, what is that? YMMV, right? Your mileage may vary, but in our organization, what's worked best is just when folks reach out, I keep my calendar open, and I keep openings on my calendar so that I can meet with them if need be, and literally just Monday I did a one-on-one Power BI 30,000 foot level with a manager. And so it's trying to meet people where they are. And that's a lot of, lessons learned over the years is trying to meet people where they are.
Yeah. I think that's, part and parcel to what Jeff just mentioned in the chat. It's difficult to scale across business units and various personas, right? There's a lot of different types of context and people, what they care about. Trying to message to everybody all at once it's tough, right? But I like what you've got. You've got like the basics, you've got the foundations, you've got the ability for those to connect and ask questions with you, and get it related to their own self. And to your point too, it's all kind of dependent on what organization you're at. Maybe at yours, they don't use office hours much, but maybe at another, office hours are the next hot thing. Everything takes a little bit of trial and error. And I think being open to that trial and error, and being able to iterate on it. Sounds like you guys have kind of found that secret sauce, right? That works the best for City Bend.
Yeah, well, whether we've found it or not, I think we keep finding it, right? Like,
love it.
As the organization changes and matures, it's iterate, move to the next thing if this thing isn't working.
Now, maybe you'll chuckle from the next question. What about user groups? Do you guys have your own internal user groups? Do you leverage this user group, or is there another one out in City of Bend? I do know a lot of larger organizations that have their own internal user groups that then interface with the city or local ones. So I'd love to know, are you the City of Bend user group leader?
I am indeed the City of Bend. You knew that.
Let's go,
I am
baby.
indeed
I
the City
teed you
of
up.
Bend.
Come on.
Yeah. So we do have an internal user group. So a previous question was all about adoption, right? And this is another way that we keep Power BI front and center, and kind of keep generating that buzz around it, right? Is the user groups. And so we've been doing those since shortly after our first training in 2017. We've done 136 presentations since then, 66 unique presenters. My next user group meeting is literally tomorrow. And if any of you would love to come in and get some experience presenting to a user group, I absolutely love to have folks from the outside come talk Power BI or just data in general and how you use data at your organization. So hit me up. I'm on LinkedIn. Hit me up here.
Raymond,
Boone at bendoregon.gov.
Please drop your contact in here. Here, I'll help try and find your LinkedIn as well if you want to drop your email. Yeah, yep. I think I've got your email.
I would love to host it if you want to come swing by the user group and talk.
And make sure anybody that reaches out to Ray, make sure you call him Ray, not Raymond.
I mean, I'll answer Raymond too.
Oh, Manju.
My wife calls me Raymond.
Love that.
Nice.
And Manju, if you want to come present here at our user group as well, I'll say blanket invite to everybody. Anybody that wants to get some experience, open to it.
Thank you. And I think I'm already connected with Raymond on LinkedIn. So
fantastic.
Perfect. Yeah, just reach out, and I would be happy to have you come present. It'd be awesome.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Right? We got a Microsoft MVP in the making.
Yeah.
All right. Next question, and I think there's a question here by Jeff. Sorry, I've got like way too many windows open and only one screen. How do you reduce duplication of work and standardize data for the business? That's a loaded question for sure. And thank you, Jeff, for the question.
Definitely. So we're still pretty small in terms of the number of actual Power BI report developers. One of the things that we kind of have this concept of is different workspaces, and that's mainly because I feel like there's different types of reports, right? So we've got reports that are kind of this enterprise level, and that's they're not just for a single department or work group, they're for the entire city. And for those types of reports, those are primarily developed by my team, right? So we reduce the duplication that way by because we communicate within the team, right? We have the data mart that we use.
Communicate? No way. You guys communicate?
Yeah,
I know that's hard for some teams.
Yeah, I said that and I almost chuckled, but the reality is not everybody does that great. And so I forget sometimes how lucky I am to work with a team where we do communicate so well. So that's one of the things. We also have a report catalog, and the report catalog is out there to let you know not just how to access reports, but like what's in those reports, right? And so I don't know if you spotted it in the template, but there's instructions in the template, and the very first instruction in the template is check to make sure you're not building a report that already exists. So we really emphasize that. I didn't click the report checklist. We've got this report publishing checklist, but that is another one that's out there. And the very first thing on that is check to make sure the thing you're about to publish doesn't already exist. Now, do we have some overlap? Absolutely. One of the things that we do is we have shared semantic models, formerly known as data sets. And so, if you're going to build a report off of that has this, and this in it, then use this model over here, right? And it's not just my team that has access to those. We've got some of those folks that do the self-service analytics out there creating reports off of those as well. One of the shared semantic models out there, I think, has 25 or 30 reports built off of it. And so that's another way. We also make pretty heavy use of data flows so that we're not putting the same data up there over and over and over. I mentioned our data mart, our SQL data mart, Mirror Pond. Yeah, so it's a combination of those things, right? Are we the best at it? Absolutely not. We could always do better. And we do try and audit things. I've got a project right now. We're working to move all of our Power BI reports and paginated reports actually off of the report server and up into Fabric. As I'm moving some of those, I'm doing it knowingly, knowing that I have duplicate data in there and that I don't need it there. But right now the focus is get it there and then go back and go like, okay, this is pulling data from here, but that's also pulling it from there, and that's also pulling it from there. And then we're going to build a shared model and work on it like that. The one I'm working on currently is all about employee data, because as you can imagine, employee data gets into everything, right? Everybody wants to know who's accessing what, how long have they been there, what's the turnover look like. So employee data kind of grew up in all these different places, and now I'm in the middle of a consolidative effort to get a single or fewer, I guess, of those models where we've got that duplicate data over and over there, right? That's one of the places where Fabric is going to come in handy with one link, right? So you've got the data just in there one time, and then you can just kind of reuse it. So we're just starting to dip our toes in the water there, but I do feel like that's going to have a big impact on that duplicative data. Hope that explains or answers the question.
Jeff, any more clarity you want or follow-on question? Feel free to come off mute, Jeff.
No, I mean, we're kind of in the same boat with our company, right? Where, we've developed system developers. We've got a small group of people that are kind of getting used to the data and wrangling that data. And I think right now where we're at is, we're learning more about the data. Like there's a lot of hidden gems in this data that they're like, hey, we have all these scenarios or external sources. And so maybe one question to you is, how do you handle external sources that people aren't using the system or the system can't handle that data? Because we find that a very big challenge in our company right now too.
Can you say more about the external data? Like
Excel files that might be held on a SharePoint site, or maybe they're bringing in text files or CSV files, right? And I know OneLake's going to help solve a lot of that, but you still have users using these offline, ad hoc tools to do something, and then you find out about it, about a year later, 6 months later, you're like, oh, we didn't even know about that, and that's why our numbers are totally different than what you have. It just creates all sorts of interesting challenges. I'm just wondering how you guys handle it.
Yeah. So first of all, that's a problem for us too. It's definitely not something that we've fully solved. When you're talking about the SharePoint data, right? So whether it's SharePoint list data or files in SharePoint, et cetera, one of the things we've recently stood up is a Fabric data warehouse and standardized on, if it's SharePoint data, it goes to the data warehouse first, and then you get it from there. And that's where it always comes from.
Do you have it as a true data warehouse like object, or is it a lakehouse?
A Fabric data warehouse. It is a Fabric data warehouse. Yeah, we went the data warehouse route because it aligns better with the other person that works for me is the DBA. He is very much a SQL Server database
DBAs,
guy.
yeah.
And they love the data warehouse, right?
What's the name of the tool they use? SSMS.
SQL Server Management Studio. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. If it's not an SSMS, it doesn't exist. So
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So that's one of the ways that we're kind of handling that, though, is like that. But one of the other ways, Greg's talked about what we do being self-service, and I want to emphasize that it's a managed self-service, right? So one thing we do is we manage who gets to set up data refreshes. So only we set up the data refreshes. So if you want access to that data and you want your data to be refreshed, and it needs to get into it needs to get onto the data gateway that we have set up, then it has to go through us. Otherwise, you got to manually refresh it and you put it up there in the cloud, right? And that kind of helps us have a better handle on what's out there. Like if it's a file thing, well, then that file thing has to go in either a SharePoint spot, and we have a specific SharePoint site set up for files, or it has to go on our network drive, and we have a specific network drive set up just for that, right? So it has to go in one of those two places, and that's it. That's the source of truth. You don't get to use another thing. I mean, you can, but it don't get published, I guess is sort of the point, right? So could we do better? Absolutely, we can do better. I will say that I've got governance documents written that kind of cover this stuff as well. So when it comes up, we do have things to fall back on. The governance documents are not written in stone. I always try to say yes. So if I can, and sometimes that means the governance documents need to be changed and updated, and we have to find a solution that works across the organization, right? Not just for that one person. So
the business changes a lot. People's job roles change, functions change. Governance should never be written in stone, right? But is not written, at least enforced in some way.
Yes. Absolutely.
Which to my next point, and we've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to jump to some more of these following questions, right? Measuring success, finding those KPIs and metrics, was there success in transitioning to new KPIs and metrics? And can you share any milestones to leveraging measures for the organization?
Yeah, so measuring success is another thing that I feel like we can always do better on. We do keep usage data, like I said, so far, like in 2024, we're at 303 Power BI reports as of right now for 2024, 387 unique users, and the city's employee population is just over 750. So that's, you know, what, a little over half-ish, right, of our employees. But something that's kind of interesting to note there is we've got an awful lot of people who spend most of their time in vehicles. That's police, fire, streets, utilities, etc. So most of the people that can use the Power BI reports end up using them. Last month, we had more than 9,000 report executions. So we kind of keep track of things like that. You talked about milestones. A big one for us was just when we were formed back in 2018. That first public-facing council goal report going live is kind of one of the big wins that happened that helped us be successful. Other things like having the chief innovation officer come on board, and that other city manager who used to be the CDD director. Those are huge milestones. And then proposing and standing up the data mart that's still going strong after 5 years. Instead of trying to build an actual data warehouse, hiring a first report developer, all those things. We've gone from a department of 4 people to 18 now. So all those things I feel like really help to underscore the types of work that has been done and the success of that work, because the organization believes in it. And they've been willing to sort of put their money, where their mouth is. After we put out the Ben PD Data Hub, very quickly we got calls from the fire department wanting something just like it out there, right? They're anxious to get their data out there. And like I said, the affordable housing folks, we've got lots and lots of data out there now on the community development side of things. And we're basically just always getting more requests. So there's just always lots out there. So success is measured in the number of new requests we get. I feel like it's measured in how often we get requests for changes, because when people want a change to a report, it means they're trying to use it to do what the report's intended for. And maybe they just need one more piece of information, or they need to look at it a different way. Or if it just had this, then they would have everything they need, right? And so
just to add on that, by the way, Raymond,
yeah.
So it sounds like you're getting like report telemetry. Are you getting that from the Fabric like admin portal? Is that where a lot of your KPIs, or you're like pulling data from the API? And then on the other side of it, as you're saying, like, these requests, are you managing those requests directly through Fabric or in Power BI through a Power App or something, or SharePoint? Like, how are you counting those tickets and requests?
Yeah, so we have a ticketing system. So some of those, things like report changes, they can come through the ticketing system. We try to be open to, like I said, to saying yes. And so if I get an email for a change, or Nancy, who's our lead report developer, if she gets an email, then that turns around and ends up as a ticket, just so we can kind of capture those numbers, right? In terms of the report telemetry, we are getting that out of Fabric. I'm using PowerShell scripts to grab that data, pull it down into files, and then stuff it into SQL that I can turn around and use. And then because we have the Power BI report server still, I have to marry that data together. I have to smush it, right? Together. It doesn't.
Smushing is a technical term.
It is. It's absolutely. Yeah, we smoosh it together, and yes. And then we have an overall picture, right, of not just what's out there, but how frequently it gets used, if it's not getting used, if refreshes are failing, stuff like that, right? So looking at refresh failures versus successes can give me a KPI that's the failure rate, right? And if the failure rate's above a threshold, then probably need to revisit that data model, right? Because if it's not working right, if it's failing a lot, there's probably a reason in there that it's failing a lot. And then just starting to make more use of the Fabric Capacity app that's out there, right? So you can that's one of those that you can just grab off of App Source and install in your Fabric Capacity. So that's another way that I'm.
That's what I was
starting
waiting
to
for.
look at that. Yeah.
everybody should have the Fabric capacity. We used to have the Power BI. I was like, not the Power BI observability app. There was an app for like
the
Power BI
premium
admin.
capacity measurement or whatever it was.
That's
yeah,
it.
Yes.
There was
yeah.
something, some word. It's changed so many times.
Yeah.
But the new one that we all care about for those that have Fabric capacity is the app Raymond just mentioned. Find
Yeah.
it on the App Store.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And super useful for seeing where you're what's using up all your CUs, right? what's causing things to break. It's super useful for that. It is extremely slow though. Oh my God.
Yeah. Have you ever, and Gordon, we will get to your question next. One part is using the COE. I know the Power Platform COE also provides visibility into Power BI and some of the telemetry there. Have you guys ever thought about using the COE at all?
No, I need to find out more.
I am going to drop that into the chat right now. Power Platform.
Awesome.
This is the free package by Microsoft in Git. Platform center of. It's mostly designed for like Power Apps, Power Automate, and everything else, but it does have Power BI component, and voila, it is a Power BI report. That's how a lot
Nice.
of the data is surfaced. So let me drop that here. And again, free 99. You just need to have the right global admin rights and a little bit of elbow grease, and you can get this thing moving.
Awesome.
Gordon, please feel free to come off chat and ask your question, or come off mute and ask your question.
Hi. Wait, are you guys able to hear me?
We
Yes.
are able
Okay.
to hear you.
Yes. I was wondering, I saw the city of Bend and how you guys use the iframe. Has there been concerns about ADA accessibility for the webpage because it's embedded that way?
It's a great question.
That is a great question. Yeah. And
It's because it's something we're struggling with at the city of Hillsborough. I'm actually your counterpart at the city of Hillsborough. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you run a user group as well?
We do.
Yeah. Rock on, Gordon.
Rock on. Absolutely. Yeah. So we are, I will say that we are trying to move away from the embedded stuff. So if you happen to open up that Bend PD data hub, one of the things you'll see, maybe I'll just paste a screenshot into the chat here real quick. But one of the things you'll see is some quick stats that are just barely, like if you scroll down just a little bit on that page, those are done within ArcGIS. So the embedded dashboards, most of these public facing things that we do, we use a tool from Esri called Story Maps. And so the story maps give us this sort of context that it's hard to have with a Power BI report, right? So if you want to have a whole bunch of text in there, it just, I don't know. I feel like this is one of the places where Microsoft could do better, honestly. But the Esri tool kind of gives us that. But then you have that issue like Gordon talked about, right? Where you've got accessibility problems because you've got a thing embedded in another thing. And if you're trying to use a screen reader or whatever, it don't work good. There's no getting around that. And so we're kind of moving away from that. We have this City of Bend council goals. And let's see, maybe I'll drop a link to one of those.
There is accessibility features built into native Power BI reports and native Power BI apps, right?
Yeah.
And I believe, when you're using the iframe, to your point, the screen reader isn't there unless you like maximize it. I think you can still leverage the accessibility features when you're within the iframe, correct?
Right. I believe so. But I haven't actually tested that with the screeners, and it really it gets to be really hard to guarantee that you're having that everybody's getting a good experience, right? So the link I just popped in the chat there is sort of another take on putting data out there. I don't love it. This is currently being reworked into something that's much more attractive. But you'll notice there are no Power BI embeds in that, and that was intentional. So we are kind of moving away from that where possible. But sometimes Power BI really is the only tool that can show the data that you want to, the data the way that you want to show it. And in that case, we have links on the site.
It looks like it works for It looks like it works for Power BI embedded, by the way. So, you know, there's, for those that don't know, there's a difference between Power BI published to the web and then using the Power BI API and an embedded app and actually getting a full, you know, app deployed within an app. And so I just dropped that link in the chat here, Gordon, for you. If you have premium capacities, you know, you can almost think of an embedded SKU being like a premium capacity. You know, something to talk with your Microsoft rep. I've got tons of blog posts around on Power BI embedded, but that might be a better transition and solving your problem.
Thank you.
So we've got about 6 more minutes until I have to hop. I would love to give everybody the floor for their questions versus me kind of taking up all the air here. Any questions for Raymond?
I have a follow-up question if there's no one else, though. I don't want to hog it.
Hog it up, Gordon.
So we're also experiencing a lot of vendors moving to a SaaS model, software as a service, and our data is going into the cloud. And have you developed any solutions for how to claw it back or integrations with Fabric or any other tools?
Yeah, not a whole lot yet. So we're pretty fortunate at the moment in that two of our main systems are local, meaning we've got full access to the SQL servers, right? One of those, though, Munis, that's our financial and HR system, that is getting ready to head to the cloud. So one of the things that will be happening is as that move to the cloud happens, they're going to have to negotiate to make sure we've got access to the data, whether that's via API or some other way. We'll absolutely have to have access to the data, because as is the case with many of those systems, they just don't provide the reporting and analytics out of the box that you really need. And you really, especially if you want to marry that data up with data from another system, right? So let's say you want to look at what's in your budget and then compare that to what's coming in, what kind of revenue is coming into CityView for permitting or system development charges or any of that. That's absolutely doable when you've got access to the SQL servers, but each individual system ain't doing that.
So on that note, and it sounds like you guys have vendors that are either early in their transition to the cloud, and thus you are moving to that transition to the cloud, unless they've had this and you guys just haven't moved on to it. But something to ask them is, what I'm seeing more and hoping more vendors do is getting away from APIs and getting more into data shares, or, you know, a single tenant like cloud database share. So that way you don't have to go and do all this extra work to manage an API and how APIs update. It's 2024 and generative AI and AI bots are taking over the world. The last thing you need is an API for managing a new analytics layer, right? Data share is the future. And if you have a chance to talk to that vendor, Gordon, I'm happy to help you as well, and say, we expect a data share versus API access, specifically for analytics.
We use Munis as well, so I hope to keep in touch with Raymond after this, so we can maybe brainstorm on future similar
gang up,
issues.
You guys, gang up.
So
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to chat with you more about it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Or you can bring people like me who know both those pieces, right?
Absolutely.
Manju, do you work with Munis, or what's your background?
No, so I did my research work back in 2013, and I started my own training company for advanced analytics. So I mean, I have done like AI like 2013. My paper was published.
AI ain't new, right?
And no, it wasn't. So basically, so I've been following the clouds, and basically I created my own Power BI training modules, and I was going and training others, you know.
Great.
But
Great.
right now, I mean, I am not working, and I need something to do, and I can come and speak on Fabric. I feel very confident about it.
Wait, I love the go-getter mentality. So, hey, everybody, anybody who's looking for some Power BI talent and training, Manju is here for you.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
speaking up, Manju. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Well, We've got a couple minutes left. Raymond, is there any closing remarks? I know we were able to get through all the questions. We were pretty close. You know, we could either, you know, I would love for you to choose what you'd like to end on, or if you want to do goals and challenges ahead, pick your poison.
Boy, I guess the thing I'd want to end on is that I came here today to share, to kind of open up the black box of our data program and share with you all. I did not come here as to present myself as a like I know it all. I absolutely do not. I can always learn new things. I can always learn new stuff, and always want to learn more and be better and have a better program. The ultimate goal here really is to serve the employees of the city and also the citizens of Bend here, more so than to just serve my own ego, right? Like, so if I can do something better, I want to hear from you. If you've got ideas, or yeah, please do reach out. And if you're like, that thing you said, I'm not sure about that, reach out, let me know. My mind can absolutely be changed, and I just want to incorporate the best of what I find out there to serve, you know, to serve the city.
Raymond, you're such a model citizen, dare I say model citizen developer.
Oh, yeah. Like
great power platform joke.
Model,
semantic model. All right, we don't let it get it carried away. You guys, I would love if everybody came on camera, and let's just celebrate Raymond. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your experience and being so open with everybody, and just being a beacon of openness and information.
Thanks everybody for listening tonight.